are thousands of careers in California, but how are we supposed to know which is the right career for us? If we're to spend 40 to 50 hours a week, over 10,000 hours a year, we're going to want to choose a career that we're best at and one that we love. And with the average American changing their jobs up to 7 times during their lifetime, finding the right career as soon as possible will contribute to better health and help you live a richer and fuller life. The right career is out there waiting for you, and I'm going to help you find it. I'm Freddy Cochran. Welcome to California Careers. Welcome to another edition of California Careers. I'm Freddy Cochran, your host. We're in Hermosa Beach, California, outside the Hermosa Beach Police Station. We're going to go inside and learn how to become a police officer. A very cool career. We're going inside to meet the police chief himself, Mr. Steve Johnson. He's going to tell us how we can become a police officer. Let's go see how it's done. We're here today to teach young people how to acquire the career of police officer. What exactly, I think we know what a police officer is, but can you sort of describe a police officer's roles?
Well, obviously a police officer's role, the primary issue is to take care of our communities, and that includes a safety concern, which, making sure people aren't harmed. We also want to make sure that people's valuables, their property is not harmed, they're allowed to keep it, it's not taken. But part of it also has another facet to it, and that's an issue of all things traffic control. We spend a large amount of our time working on traffic issues. As we know, Southern California is essentially one large city from about Camp Pendleton to the Ventura County line and going east towards the Inland Empire. And traffic's obviously getting worse, and we know that's a problem. So it's multifaceted. But the biggest issue I always talk about, if you had one thing to talk about being a police officer, is being flexible to what the needs are of the community.
Wow, that's very cool. I think a lot of times when we think of police officer, we think of sort of criminal activity, but you guys are spending a lot of your time in the civil section.
Very much so. In fact, if one were to look at the statistics, what we actually do for criminal law enforcement is actually much less than you would think. We spend a lot of time, of all things, answering alarms from cars or from businesses, residences. We spend a lot of time doing that. We have disputes between neighbors. Part of our job is to, if you will, we're dispute resolution specialists. Okay. And it's not a crime issue, but it is an issue that affects the community and the neighborhood, so it has its own issues and why it needs to be taken care of.
Okay. Is a police officer always dealing with the public, or is it always sort of a social function, or are they sometimes dealing in an administrative function?
Well, I think you kind of said it all. We're all of those. We do end up obviously working with the community. That's primarily what we do. We take care of the community. But we work from an administrative standpoint, and depending on your rank, as a patrol officer, you'll spend more time with the community than you will any other place. My job as a police chief is mostly administrative.
Okay.
I always joke around at how nice it is to occasionally go for a walk and get out of my office so I can talk to people.
Okay.
Because that's the reality. I work on things like budget and some other things like that. So it is different in that regard. One of the things too is if you're a detective, that's going to be different than a patrol officer.
Okay.
So again, things change depending on the need, and sometimes on the issue of how we deploy officers. So again, get back to that whole multifaceted approach.
You better have some social skills if you want this career.
Absolutely. I think it's like everything else. As a society, and properly so, as a society, we understand officers have a job to ensure that the safety of the community, which may include having to arrest people. It may have uses of force, but doesn't mean that you handle everything by use of force. It doesn't mean you handle everything by arrest. You have to be able to talk to people. You have to have incredible patience at times, because we found out over the years it's much better to work with people to get things done than to work against people to get things done.
Yes.
There's an old saying, about talking people to jail instead of fighting them to jail.
Okay.
And it's the honest to God truth. We'd much rather do that. And I can't tell you over the years how many times we've been successful at that in my own experience. And having to arrest people, I've arrested people for murder, and they thanked me and shook my hand for how I treated them.
Wow.
So again, to me, that's a win-win.
Yeah. Yeah. You had mentioned the role of, say, detective to the chief. Let's talk about the hierarchy of the police department. When you come in as a police officer, you start out at what level?
Well, if you start out, actually, before you actually get to the become a police officer, you have to go through a testing process, and it's very, very long. It has to do with, besides filling out an application for employment, and you're going through, there's usually a standardized testing from the state of California. And if you pass that, then you go through an oral board where you're interviewed by police officers. Sometimes
Mm-hmm.
we'll have a police officer with a civilian
Mm-hmm.
member of the community,
Mm-hmm.
and they're rated and scored from that direction. After that, if we look at them, they have to do a full background investigation,
Mm-hmm.
which is very extensive. Just filling out the actual pages, what the state of California puts together, is about a 40-page application.
Wow.
And it
Wow.
asks you everything that you've ever done in your life, good and bad. And
Can I lie on that?
Oh yeah. Oh yeah. If you do, yeah, you're welcome to lie on it. You just won't be fired. and unfortunately, it will follow you.
It will. You better be honest on that thing.
Yes, they stay through, and their records are kept.
Can I have a misdemeanor
Sure.
or something on my record and still become a police officer?
Yes, and it's not uncommon. We all understand the old thing about youth is wasted on the young.
Mhm.
We have had officers for the other departments I work for, and some here, they've made mistakes.
Mm-hmm.
They've also learned from mistakes.
Mm-hmm.
None of us are perfect. We've all done things we wish we hadn't.
Mm-hmm.
And I think we'll all be that way till the day we die. We wish we had changed things here and there. But again, my biggest issue is people learn from things.
Mm-hmm.
And I think as a society, again, I think people like the fact that we do learn and progress and move
Mm-hmm.
forward. However, we also know some things that are done, we just can't hire you.
Mm-hmm.
Nor do, legally,
Mhm.
or even if it is legal, just because of what they've done in the past, I
Mhm.
can't have that person, representing our community.
Mm-hmm.
So again, it depends on what was happening at the time, the severity.
Mm-hmm.
There's several different factors.
Mhm.
So it's a bit of a gray area, but again, I always look at it, would I want that person representing this community?
Mm-hmm.
And if I say, Phil, no, that's not a good fit, I don't want to hire that person.
Mm-hmm.
That's simple.
That's a great point. On the other hand, what seems kind of cool is if somebody was maybe a juvenile and they had gotten into some trouble and they sort of developed a love for the criminal justice system, they might make a fabulous police officer. Would you ever take something like that into consideration?
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah.
I've worked with police officers from different agencies,
Mhm.
and they were upfront with stuff. As a 16-year-old, I did this, and it was
Mhm.
really stupid, and they did learn.
Mm-hmm.
Some were 18, 19-year-old
Mhm.
did something stupid and learned.
Mm-hmm.
I can also tell you some officers I know who were 21, 22 years old. They had too much to drink, got arrested for a DUI.
Right. Right.
Very embarrassed by it, learned
Mhm.
from it, and that's great.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that's what we need. We understand, having gone, when somebody goes through that, I guess the positive side is they understand what the mechanizations are.
Mhm.
They understand what the concerns are because they're having to face it personally.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
But I think that's a good advantage too when they're dealing with kids or other people and addressing these issues, and they can say, hey, I know what it's like to do this. You
Mhm.
haven't done this yet.
Mhm.
Don't.
Right.
I was able to get through this thing and to move forward, but again, I prefer that you don't do that.
Right. Right.
So again, there's some advantages to that. There's a lot to be said about learning, from books and from the academy that an officer would go through. But sometimes the school of hard knocks really has its advantages. And
I agree.
And if nothing else, you can't substitute education for wisdom.
Right.
And I think that's what we sometimes get.
I know you had started to mention about the application requirements. I want to talk about that in a moment, but first I want to get back to the hierarchy under this roof. Now, when one comes in as a police officer, what is the title of that person? Is it
Well, if we hire them, they would send them through the academy. They'd be a police officer trainee.
police officer trainee? So you're
Right.
not actually a full-fledged.
You're not an
cop
officer
yet.
at all. You're just
Okay.
you're employed by your department
Mhm.
to attend what's between a 5 and 6 month long academy.
Okay.
And again, it could be LA County Sheriff's Academy, it could be Rio Hondo Academy, Golden West Academy,
Mhm.
Orange County Sheriff's Academy, any throughout the state.
Mm-hmm.
But again, you have to get through that. It's very difficult. Some are more difficult than others. Orange County Sheriff's is probably the most difficult one in the state.
Mm-hmm.
And
Tell us about the academy, like day-to-day type of things that are going on in there.
it is.
Is that the cop school?
Yes, it is.
Mhm.
Matter of fact, I actually went to the Orange County Sheriff's Academy
Mhm.
many years ago,
Mhm.
and it is extremely difficult. It's
Wow.
long hours.
Mm-hmm.
The only thing that they accept is perfection,
Wow.
and their whole reason behind it, and it is very difficult.
Mhm.
You're tired,
Mm-hmm.
you're frustrated,
Mhm.
but the reason why they do that is so they can produce the best deputy sheriff or police officer to serve these communities.
Wow.
They have incredibly high standards.
Mm-hmm.
There were people that in my academy class, one of them lied on a report, fired.
Wow.
One small lie, because
Mhm.
the thing is, one small lie, if you let that go, will that become two small lies? And at what point does it become a large lie?
Wow.
So again, these are critical issues that they come upon. The physical fitness issues, you need to how to shoot well, rifle, pistol, shotgun, arrest control techniques. Ethics are constantly put in time after time. Daily inspections.
Wow.
If they're looking at your uniform, such as right here where I have my name plate on here, if you look at the nameplate and it's slightly off, just slightly off kilter.
Wow. So
They're
all of this
obvious.
that is going on your uniform, that's
Right.
a premeditated deal that needs to be in line.
Exactly. Well, the whole thing has to be, if you're dealing with somebody, whether it's somebody who's a bad guy or somebody who's just Joe Citizen having a bad day, you get more respect and you have a better way of dealing with people when they show that you look in a very professional manner.
Yes, I agree.
I've over the years, unfortunately, I've seen some officers who are overweight, sloppy, and then what's the opinion that one would get from that? Not a good one.
Okay.
So again, I think it benefits everybody else by having those standards. Now, I'll also tell you too that a guy who goes to the academy or a young lady goes to the academy at 21 years old and gets through, going to be a little bit different when they're 51, 52, 53. That's the reality.
Is there an age limit to becoming a police officer?
Not really.
Okay.
There's a minimum age limit, 21.
Okay, minimum age.
But again, it depends on the department. The reality is too, though, at some point, do you really want, some places have talked about, keeping cops forever.
Yeah.
Do you really want 65, 70-year-old police officers handling things?
The
reality
rookie.
is probably not. Yeah, exactly. The kid, 70-year-old. So.
Now, inside the cop school, it sounds like a lot of it is physical. It's also mental, right? A scholastic type of preparation.
It's very much so. It's scholastic. You have different lectures. As a matter of fact, I am also a part-time staff at Orange County Sheriff's Academy.
Awesome.
And it's a great opportunity to learn, but you have many different facets that you have to look at, different types of criminal laws, ethics issues, you name it. Procedures. And the minimum requirements right now for a post, which is it's part of the California Department of Justice, Peace Officer Standards and Training. It's a division of the California Department of Justice. They regulate all the academies and all police officers and deputy sheriffs, CHP officers. And in those academies, when you're dealing with these things, they are very clear that you have to know these sections verbatim.
Verbatim, wow.
Yeah, they are very much into this stuff. It is detail, detail, detail. It has to be that way. We can't go in there and take a crime report that is vague, inaccurate.
These guys got to know grammar. They got to know spelling.
Right. Like one of my drill instructors there mentioned, we had a person in there who has had some problems writing. Smart guy, just not a good writer. And he said, I can't look at a report that you have that says gooder than the other one.
Oh, no.
Literally.
Get him on the witness stand in court.
Exactly.
Holy cow.
And again, it's an issue. Yeah, it's an issue of professionalism.
I agree. Okay. Let's talk about, so the cop school, that's about 6 months?
That's yeah, the actual academies.
The academy.
Yes.
Okay, the academy. That's the politically correct. Okay, so we're going to do that for 6 months, and you might not make it through. You might lose it there and not make the cut, and then it's over for you.
Well,
can you re-enroll if you get
often
canned, or do you flunk out? How does?
Well, it depends. First off, some places, some academies are known for being more difficult than others. They still have certain minimal standards that the state maintains. So no matter what, they are still meeting those standards, or that candidate's gone. But Orange County Sheriff's is, most people would kind of guesstimate saying, probably the most difficult one in California.
Okay.
LA County Sheriff's is difficult, LAPD is, and there's several other academies that are very difficult. Some are less difficult, and it is what it is, but they still meet those standards. But the primary issue is that if somebody fails, and that does happen, they're allowed. There's what they call, there's certain tests that they have to take, and they can take it once. If they fail it, they have a second chance to try it over. And if they miss the second one, they're out of the academy.
They're out of the academy.
They can reapply later.
Okay.
But they have to start all over again.
Okay. So your dream isn't shot if you.
No, unless there's unless what they call an honors violation.
Okay.
Tell
us about what is that.
Well, if you're in the academy, if you lie, cheat, or steal, essentially.
Okay.
That's
okay.
Yeah, and that's pretty much insurmountable, because of the fact, how do we have somebody there that's lying, cheating, stealing,
right,
and then saying, yeah, we want you to be a police officer or a deputy sheriff.
Okay.
It goes against the grain of what we're supposed to be.
I agree. Yes.
And so that's what it comes into. I've known officers who made a mistake. Yeah, they screwed up a test twice, and they're out of the academy. They waited a few months, reapplied, and got everything squared away. And sometimes these people have some personal problems; they weren't focused right, and the second time around went through just fine.
And they made it through, and they're cops today.
Doing very well. Yes.
That's awesome.
So.
Okay, so let's say you make it through the 6 months of the academy.
Yes.
And do you have your choice, or you can just apply to any law enforcement agency in the country, or well, how do you know where to go from there?
Well, predominantly in California, a person who's applying to go to California Academy more than likely wants to stay in the state of California.
Okay.
However, have been people I know of who've applied and gone through a California Academy, didn't get hired, but they were able to go to places, Arizona and other places, and get hired and take what they call an equivalency test.
Okay.
Because California, their standards are higher than anybody else's. And so if you have that certificate in your hand, and they say, yeah, but our laws aren't the same here in California, say, as in Arizona or Nebraska or whatever else it is, they'll recognize that, and they'll usually send them to a 3-week or month short academy to orient them towards their views of how to handle law enforcement.
Okay.
So again, it's not necessarily that it's completely over. Matter of fact, my younger brother was a officer here in the South Bay area, and decided he was just tired of California, and he's a deputy sheriff in Arizona.
Wow. Okay.
And where he's enjoying life, and he had to go to a 3-week equivalency course, and he said it was fine. You know, it was just more of an orientation than anything.
Well, I bet California prepares you well.
Very much so.
For another state.
Yeah, and that's one of the. Say what they want about California. Many things we do real well, and I think amongst those is the fact for law enforcement we do have the highest standards of any of the states.
Okay, so we've gotten out of the academy. So let's say, how do you get on, say, with Hermosa Beach Police Department at that point?
Well, if you put in your application, we hired you as a trainee, you're already gone through and you graduate the academy. Some people have graduated academies had not been picked up. They sent themselves through at their own cost, which is very, very expensive. Okay. They have to buy their own uniforms, their leather gear, which is their belt, their holsters, all those sort of things, and there's other costs associated with it. And is
that a ballpark around $6,000? Yeah, is that the right
I'd
number?
say about $6,000 to $8,000.
Pay for it yourself.
Right, and they have to pay for it themselves. But they get the same. If they graduate, they may not have been picked up yet, but they can. If they have that in hand, they can apply also. Okay. And matter of fact, sometimes we like to look at people like that because, quite frankly, you have somebody didn't quite get picked up. It's not uncommon. The guy was, that close, and they went with another guy type thing. They did one opening. It doesn't mean that guy or that lady isn't. They're very qualified. They just didn't get that job. We've been able to pick people up like that. In fact, I'm going to be hiring a young lady here next week. Wow. Who went to the Golden West Academy and just didn't quite get picked up. Very squared away young lady. And here I am. I'm able to pick her up. I didn't have to send her to an academy for 6 months.
Hermosa saved the money?
We saved the money. We have somebody that's here. We have somebody that's proven. We know she's going to get through the academy because she got through the academy.
And what a commitment on her end to drop that dime herself. Yes. You can tell that she's a passionate.
Very much so. And that says a lot to me because she couldn't work. She had to save up money in advance because you can't do 40, 50, 60 hours a day, 60 hours a week in the academy, plus your homework on your weekends, and also run another 40-hour job. It just can't be done. Wow. So again, you talk about somebody who's really focused, and one of the things we like about her, we think she will be a very good police officer.
All right. So let's say the person graduates the academy. Hermosa Beach Police paid the money to put this person through. They've graduated. They come back. Do they already have their gun at that point? When do you get the gun?
Well, if we've hired them, for the academy, they will be issued a firearm, a pistol, for the academy.
Oh, so they get it before? Okay, for the academy.
It just won't be loaded. And obviously, they will have the magazines for their weapons. Which some people call the clips. They'll have those. Those are also going to be empty. Wow. And they will not be allowed to have any ammunition on them except for when they're at the shooting range, and they have their instructors with them. Okay. And by choice, it's obviously a safety issue. I've been shooting since I was a little kid. I grew up in a family where my dad, who was one of the best rifle shooters in the nation at one time, was an alternate for the Olympic team back in the day. So I've been around shooting my whole life. When I went to the academy, they didn't care. I still had to follow their rules. I felt very comfortable shooting from the get-go, but that's okay. I still learn things from it. It's like everything else in life. Every day I learn something. And this is another one of those things too. Again, they will have empty firearms on them for inspections and everything else. So they get used to having this belt with its weight and everything else on there, and that includes handcuffs and all this other stuff on there, baton. But that's what they want. They just won't have ammunition unless it's on the range only.
Keep it safe.
Yes.
Still trying to get, okay, so we got out of the academy, we're back to work, we show up at your front door now,
Right.
We've got the academy done, now what?
We've sworn them in, and there's
Okay.
the state of California says they have to go with a swearing process. They raise their arm. They promise to support and defend the Constitution of the United States and the state of California against all enemies, foreign and domestic.
All right.
And we really agree with that. And that's truly, it's not just words, it's true to the heart.
You can't lie about that?
You can't lie about that, and that's what I like.
Okay.
But one of the things about it, now we have an officer. They're sworn in. They have their gun. They have their badge. We got now their own ammunition too.
Okay.
And we bring them forward. Now they have the first person they're really going to work with is what's called a field training officer.
Okay.
You'll hear the term called FTO.
Okay.
Field training officer. Field training officer is an experienced officer, and they are essentially the supervisor of that brand new officer.
Okay.
And he or she has complete control. They have the same patrol car, and they work together.
Beautiful.
The academies teach you so many things, but there's also more of a practical application into this end. And that's what the field training officer is supposed to do.
Okay.
They do a daily evaluation on those officers.
Oh, okay.
They remediate issues. They correct. They also tell them, hey, you did a good job. And again, they are a true supervisor. They supervise one.
How long is that process, the FTO?
Usually 4 to 6 months.
Okay.
So again, they are still going to be active. They are answering to a supervising officer for that time period. Some will get off a little earlier than others. Some take a little longer than others. I started at Orange County Sheriff's Academy. I worked there for 3.5 years, worked patrol, the main jail and patrol. I then made a lateral transfer to the Huntington Beach Police Department. I had experience as a patrol deputy for the county of Orange. I then met with my field training officer at Huntington Beach.
Wow.
And 4 months with new training officers. And they said, yes, you're very experienced, but this is our standard.
Still got to go through it.
Absolutely.
Okay.
But it's like everything else. You learn something. Different styles, different ways to talk to people. Just little things that come up with an officer's experience. It's not written down. But again, every time you talk to somebody, you learn something out of it.
So traditionally, about between 4 to 6 months with the relationship with the FTO, they get cut loose and they're on their own.
That's correct.
Okay.
At which point they're still being monitored.
Okay.
And
how would you monitor that person?
Well, they're being monitored by their sergeant.
Like through the radio or?
Day-to-day contact with each other. The sergeants are out in the field. Sergeant may be the watch commander, but they still are out in the field. And they're out there, and yes, part of their job is to go to any call that they feel, any concerns that they have, whether the officer that they're the officers or supervisors may have 20 plus years. They still show up there. Their job is to act as a supervisor. And it may be that person who just got out of the training program, they're on their own, they're driving their own car, but the sergeant, he or she may still be out there going, I'm just nothing personal, but my job is to make sure you're doing your job well for the benefit of the community and the benefit of themselves. Okay.
Now they've been cut loose, and they're now an official police officer for the city.
That's correct.
They're on their own. What's the next step up in the hierarchy of the police force? Would that be detective? Or?
There's two different paths. A lot of officers, high percentage of them, eventually want to go to detectives. There's advantages to it, one of which you learn a different aspect of police work. Officers tend to take original crime reports that occur. They make those original arrests out in the field. But for some officers, until they get to know that, they don't know what goes on. Okay, we arrested this guy, we booked him in jail. Now what? They don't know the other side of it. Well, detectives have to follow up investigations. They have to get cases ready to be brought up to the district attorney's office for review. All sorts of paperwork comes along with it. So again, it gives them, to me, a fuller advantage. Most people do like having a detective background, and I think, quite frankly, it does make that officer well-rounded for the rest of their career because they see different aspects of it. And I worked at Huntington Beach as an auto theft detective, and I worked with two partners, and Okay, auto theft, how hard are they? Well, they're happen all the time.
Mm-hmm.
Plus, the other thing you find out too, as an auto theft detective, you make arrests on people. It's amazing how much narcotics you find in these cars.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
It's amazing how many stolen guns you find in these cars.
Mm-hmm.
And why? And you find other property because people steal cars to burglarize houses. So you talk to your burglary detectives, and so does that end up.
Okay.
You find out some of these people are dealing drugs out of the car. Well, you're dealing with narcotics detectives.
Mm-hmm.
So
Wow.
again, it's kind of a we have to work together, multifaceted again.
Wow, that's cool.
So
After the detective, how long generally would one need to be a police officer before they can make the move up to detective?
at the bare minimum, 3 years.
3 years, okay.
Some
Right
people
in
4 or
there.
5, right.
Okay.
Generally about 4 or 5, though, is pretty common.
When we get to detective, how long are we generally spending there, and what's the next step?
Well, it depends. Usually it's about, for most detectives, about 3 to 5 years.
Mm-hmm.
Some of them will go back to patrol.
Mm-hmm.
Some will then eventually come back to detectives.
Mm-hmm.
Some don't want to promote. They enjoy that. They enjoy the changes on that.
Mm-hmm.
However, some of them, the detectives will promote for sergeant. They'll put in and promote to sergeant,
Okay.
wherein they'll go back to patrol as a patrol supervisor.
Okay.
So again, there's a couple different paths, and sometimes how the individual wants to plan their career.
Mm-hmm. So we go to is detective plain clothes, or do they wear a uniform also?
They rarely wear a uniform.
They're
They usually more of a plain clothes.
Mhm.
It's not a generally not a true undercover thing, but they
Mhm.
do very often do undercover work.
Okay.
They also show up at times where they are wearing ties, suits and ties, because they're bringing paperwork in front of the district attorney's office, or we're getting a search warrant
Mm-hmm.
in front of a judge. State law says you shall contact a magistrate
Mm-hmm.
and get the order from the judge. Well, we will be you could be in a uniform, but generally the detectives will be in a suit and tie.
Now, are they nice suits, or are they the cheapies?
They actually, our guys do pretty good on that. So I guess in some place like Calexico, they're probably a little on the cheaper end. So.
We're at the detective. What's the next step? You said it was the sergeant? Would that
Yes.
be the sergeant of a specific unit, like robbery or?
Well, generally, if they promote to sergeant, they'll go back as a patrol sergeant.
Okay, patrol sergeant
I
meaning.
mean, they're often a watch commander,
Mhm.
and they monitor the police officers in the field.
Mm-hmm. Okay.
And they'll, when somebody does that, they're usually in there as a patrol sergeant for at least 2 or 3 years minimally before they'll even apply to be a detective sergeant.
Okay.
And then after that time, again, if they go back as a detective sergeant, they'll be there for 2 or 3 years as a detective sergeant, then move back as a patrol sergeant. So
Uh-huh.
we have people moving. And one advantage to it, I think it's good to get out there. You don't be stuck in one area only.
Mm-hmm.
But it also brings experience for the rest of the agency.
Mm-hmm. Do they call him Sarge?
They call
What's up, Sarge?
They call Parge. They probably call them some other things that we want to discuss. So.
Now, after sergeant, are there more jobs to get up to the police chief?
Right. After that is a rank of lieutenant.
Okay. What's his role? What does he do?
Well, our lieutenants, they supervise the sergeants.
Okay.
And for our department, we have 2 lieutenants.
Mm-hmm.
And one lieutenant is in charge of operations.
Mm-hmm.
So he's in charge of patrol,
Okay.
traffic, because we have actually a traffic bureau, it's motorcycle officers,
Mm-hmm.
and that's what that lieutenant does.
Okay.
So, and also special event planning, all that comes along with it.
Mm-hmm.
The other lieutenant is in charge of support services,
Okay.
which includes detectives, but includes other things such as maintenance of the jail.
Huh.
It
Okay.
includes some things on budget.
Mm-hmm. There's an actual jail under this roof. Is that right? Or?
Yeah, it's actually above this roof.
Above this roof. That's
So,
right.
yeah.
Downstairs.
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
How many cells are in there? What goes?
We can hold, I think it's 36 people.
Wow. Are there actually guys upstairs in jail as we speak?
There's one in there right now.
There's one in there. What do you do?
Uh,
Are you free to talk about that?
Not
No?
really.
Okay.
It's not a big deal, but I really can't. But but again, yeah, that lieutenant monitors the jail. The lieutenant also helps keep training issues going.
Mm-hmm.
So we schedule training sessions, all these other things. So again, they're constantly busy.
Mm-hmm.
It's just they're not the same as they would be in a patrol car.
Okay.
They have different aspects, and again, it's something that we all learn from, and it's
Mhm.
like our whole thing we get back to
Mhm.
is learning from experience and everything else.
Now, is there another position after lieutenant before we
Yes.
get to chief?
And that's captain,
The captain. Okay.
right? The lieutenants report to the captain.
Okay.
When I hired on here, I was hired on as a captain.
Okay.
I had previously left the San Marino Police Department. I was there for
Mhm.
several years as a lieutenant,
Mm-hmm.
and started learning a lot. This department's a little different from San Marino, which is a little different than Huntington Beach, which is a little
Mhm.
different from Orange County Sheriff's.
Give us one of those. How is it a little different? Like what?
They just have their own cultures.
Uh huh.
and there you have different communities.
What may be priority over there may not be priority here, type
right?
of thing.
And just and just ways how you handle things. But one thing I did find out, and I had been told by this from many of my friends before I started working here, and they were right on with everything. They said Hermosa Beach is. They said it's equivalency of cutting away downtown Huntington Beach and moving it up here. It's about the same.
Okay.
Then I worked in downtown Huntington Beach for many, many years as a sergeant. So again, in some ways it was an easy transition, but it's also learning new people, learning new businesses, learning new communities and needs and all those sort of issues. So they have their own issues. But getting back to it though, it's as a captain, my focus was now supervising the lieutenants, and the process of learning how Hermosa Beach Police Department works versus Orange County Sheriff's Department versus Huntington Beach Police Department versus San Marino Police Department. So I was here learning at it, and about 3 months into things, our chief retired. Greg Savelli, one of the best guys I ever knew in my life,
Wow.
And Greg retired, and they said, "Guess what? You're interim police chief."
Wow. Did you know that before you got here? That
No,
that
it
might
was
be in your
no.
future?
It was just one of those things that happened.
Wow.
And
What a cool break for your career.
yeah, very much so. And I can't thank Greg enough. I still ask him questions. And Greg still lives here in town. He come by, will help anybody. Just a wonderful guy.
Awesome.
And so here I am still as interim police chief, and which means I'm also doing police chief job and the captain's job. And our lieutenants are working their stuff too. So we'll see how things go. I may get the
Okay, so it's not permanent yet. You're the
No.
interim police
That's
chief.
correct. And if I get permanent, that'll be it. If not, I'll promote. If I get the true police chief job, I will obviously promote one of my lieutenants to captain. I will promote one of my sergeants to lieutenant.
Wow.
And I'll promote one of my officers or detectives to sergeant.
Very cool. I like the communication between the different levels, how
Very much
he's
so.
and down and so on.
That's what I like about it. But one thing I also like, kind of a little side issue, as a police captain, as a police chief, as our lieutenants are now, we work together, and none of our people, lieutenants, captains, me as a chief, or my previous chief, Greg Savelli, we will get out there and we will work with our officers. Nice. It's not uncommon. We'll work a graveyard shift on the weekends. I mean, it kind of beats you up, but we're out there working these things. Certain events, 4th of July, all of us work.
That's a big day in Hermosa.
Yes,
right?
Exactly. New Year's
Party
Eve.
time.
The party time, exactly. New Year's Eve, same thing.
That's right. That's coming up here in a week, right?
And our whole
2
thing,
weeks.
if you're not here, you better be dead. Because that's the only reason why you're excused. And we do work.
I bet.
But it's good. I think if you were to talk to our lieutenants or anything like that, they'd say, you know what? Yeah, it kind of hurts because I'm not used to staying up till 4 a.m. after working out. But they say, you know what? But it's fun to get out there again. They're very busy day to day, but they like getting out there. I got to give them a lot of credit. They work
I'm
their
glad
butts
that you funneled the conversation in that direction, because that's where I'm going. My next question is a typical day for a police officer that's new to the job, say in their first 3 years before they make the jump to detective. Let's talk about that. A typical day. I get here. Am I going to probably work the Friday night weekend type shifts as the new guy, or let's go through a typical day.
Yeah, we deploy our officers a couple times a year, so they kind of bid onto where they're going. They have some control over it. But we also want to have some experienced officers with unexperienced officers, obviously. So we don't have two sides with a group that's totally unexperienced and some that's experienced. So we kind of mix them up a little bit. But to answer what is a typical day, it's atypical. I know
there is no typical.
Yeah, I know it's a hard way of announcing it, but the classic example I would say was when I was at Huntington Beach. I had just gotten off training. I felt very good in training. About a week later, I'm away from my FTO. My first call that morning was suspicious issue in a residence. Get over there with another officer, and it's a murder victim.
Oh my gosh! Your first one?
Yeah. And
oh my gosh!
What do we do? Well, you go, geez, this is the first murder I've handled. Started with, and of course the detectives are out, and but it's all those things how you secure the day. That was my whole day, working that day. 10-hour day, but all these things that had to be done, and obviously the detectives were involved, more senior officers, the patrol sergeants, the detective sergeants, but those things happen.
Does that mean nobody's watching the traffic side, or
no? There's still people out there, but again,
there's traffic officers that are doing that side, but
but again, you may get tied up on one call, the first call of the day. You may get stuck the whole day on it. due to the issues that happen.
Okay.
So that's why I say a typical day is atypical.
Okay.
A few months ago, one of our motorcycle officers, he's just riding his motorcycle, got some concerns with some of the traffic areas going to it, and somebody called in about some guys driving erratically.
Mm-hmm.
Well, they had the officers 2 car lengths behind the guy, and sure enough, he sees a guy driving erratically.
Mm-hmm.
So he goes to pull the guy over, and all of a sudden the guy is in his pickup truck, just picked it up. He's doing about 95 miles an hour through the streets here. Crashes the car, jumps out of the car. The officer has to chase him on foot. They get him in custody. It's a stolen vehicle.
Wow.
He's got a stolen gun in the car. All these other things. And again, all these things the guys won't tell us who he is, all these other things.
Mm-hmm.
But again, the thing that worked out.
Mm-hmm.
Well, for almost half that day, that officer's tied up onto that issue.
Yeah, you never know what to expect. It
Right.
could be a day where your life is in jeopardy.
Absolutely.
Or it could be a day where it's kind of slow and you're just kind of cruising around in your vehicle there. Or?
Absolutely, and things like that happen. And this is a classic case. Officers getting out there and then, okay, it's not too far. I'm going to go check on this erratic driver.
Mm-hmm.
Doesn't know if the person's got a health problem,
Mm-hmm.
whatever else it might be. It may just be a road rage issue, maybe something.
Mm-hmm.
Going in there, and all of a sudden, who would have guessed? You know,
Mm-hmm.
he more than likely thinking, yeah, worst is going to happen. I write this guy a citation. Well, it's
Mm-hmm.
a lot worse than that.
Interesting. If I'm a young person and I want to be a police officer, can I do a ride along with the police department?
Yes,
Or?
absolutely.
You can. How
Yes,
how
we
does
can.
that work? And if I want to sign up for that?
One has to apply. Usually has to give a lieutenant's permission,
Mhm.
lieutenant or above.
Mhm.
We just have a check. We have to find out who they are. We have a copy of their driver's license. We do a quick check on them.
Mhm.
Do they have warrants? Are they a
Can't
convicted
go if you got a
felon?
warrant.
Oh well, and that does happen. We've had people applying for a ride along, and all of a sudden realize it's not going to happen tonight. Why? You have a warrant for your
Forgot about
arrest.
that.
Yeah, exactly. and sometimes said, I thought I took care of it. It may have happened. I don't know, but
Did you actually put them in cuffs?
yeah, the judge says no, you're under arrest,
Oh, lovely.
and that has happened. And it's
You weren't going to get the job anyway, dude.
yeah, exactly. So it happens, and you're going, it's not comfortable for anybody. Put it that way. But we found out other things too. People have flat lied to us, and you find out no, they're convicted felons.
Hmm.
And we're going.
They lied to you during the ride-along
Well,
application.
we have before. Well, because we do a little check on them,
Mm-hmm.
and you find out because we want to make sure we're not going to.
Sure.
We
It's
don't
gonna
have
be
to.
dangerous.
Right.
Mm-hmm.
So we find out about it, and they go, "Oh yeah, I didn't tell you that." Well,
Forgot about that.
Yeah. Okay. It's not a crime, but they haven't committed a crime by not telling us that. But but our policy is we're not going to let you want to ride along with us.
Good deal. Let's switch gears for a minute. Let's talk about you had touched on your education, that you had a bachelor's and a master's. What education do I need to become a police officer?
There's really no indication. Quite frankly, the state of California says you have to be a high school graduate.
Just high school grad?
Or GED.
Even a GED?
Yes. The
Wow.
reality is, you're probably not going to get hired.
Ah, okay.
There were times, I think, in times past where that wasn't necessarily true.
Mm-hmm.
But I think over time there's an expectation, and rightful expectation, from our society that they want educated officers working, as
Why?
they should. Well, I think a couple of things about it. You learn to learn.
Mm-hmm.
Part of this job is learning. If you're not learning something every day, you're not doing your job.
As a civilian or as a police officer?
As a police officer,
Okay.
you should be learning something
Mm-hmm.
every day. Everything should be an experience.
Okay.
And part of learning is knowing how to learn. As we know, we've
Mhm.
gone through college. You learn.
Sure.
I also think it's an issue, too, of professionalism. One of the hallmarks of that is the fact, are you educated?
Mm-hmm.
I think we have a society that demands that.
Mm-hmm.
They use taxpayer dollars to pay us.
Mhm.
I think we have an obligation to meet that.
Mm-hmm.
We've hired people who have some education, but not necessarily a degree. Most of them will go and get a degree anyways.
Mm-hmm.
Especially we get a lot of people who are military veterans,
Mhm.
because they may have gotten in the military 18, 19, 20 years old. They haven't bounced around. They really haven't had the opportunity to get education.
Mm-hmm.
But often most of them do get it. It takes a
So
little
it's
more
highly
time.
recommended to continue on with your education?
Absolutely, and especially if one does want to promote. In
Mhm.
today's environment,
Mm-hmm.
it's very difficult to make sergeant
Mm-hmm.
without at least a bachelor's degree.
Okay. So it sounds like the best course to take would be at least to get a bachelor's degree
Absolutely.
and then come in as the entry-level officer and then
Yeah.
Or even
possible.
better with a master's degree.
Right. It never hurts to have that.
Sounds like it makes everything easier. The marketability for promotions,
Yes.
the social skills, the grammar, the spelling for the reports, Fourth, Fifth Amendment issues for criminal procedure. It sounds like
Absolutely.
it just is all tied together.
Absolutely. And to put it this way, I've actually know of several officers who were attorneys. They're a member of the California Bar.
Mm-hmm.
One was also a member of the federal bar.
Wow.
And just really didn't like it anymore and became police officers.
Wow.
Very experienced people
Mm-hmm.
said, well, you spent all the time, you went to law school, you passed the bar,
Mm-hmm.
passed the federal bar. Why would you do that? They go, because I like doing this.
Wow.
So
Very
again, I also had a reserve officer that worked with me a lot at Huntington Beach,
Mm-hmm.
who's a family practice physician.
Hmm.
And he always said, he goes, geez, I just wish I spent full time in law enforcement instead of being a doctor.
Wow.
He loved it.
Really?
Really loved it. Another guy worked
Okay.
at Huntington Beach.
Good guy to have around.
Yeah, he was he was a chiropractor and a doctor of obstetrics.
Wow. Okay.
But he loved being a police officer. So it's kind of a mixed bag. But what's nice about though, their experiences come into play too.
Mm-hmm.
Somebody said this, and this. The reserve officer who was a MD. Dave, does that make sense? He goes, no, not at all. Because of this, and this. Which I wouldn't know that.
Okay.
Those are great people to have.
Let's talk about the benefits. Coming in as a starting police officer, what kind of salary ballpark are we looking at?
A police officer, after getting through training
Mm-hmm.
on their own,
Do they get paid to train at the academy? Are they getting paid?
if they're sponsored by our department, yes.
Okay.
If they're not being sponsored, they're on their own for
Okay.
every penny.
Mm-hmm.
So obviously a lot of them, not uncommon for 21, 22-year-old to move back in with mom and dad because
Mhm.
they don't have any money. They're not going to have any money.
Especially in this city.
Well, yeah, when you say, yeah, it's just one of those things. They really can't work and do all this stuff.
Mhm.
It's just too much.
Mm-hmm.
But again, once somebody's sworn in, they're one of our police officers working here.
Mhm.
They'll start out at about, with everything, with overtime, because they'll have to work overtime whether
Mhm.
they want to or not,
Mhm.
because they get held over on calls.
Mhm.
They have to go to court.
Mm-hmm.
It's not uncommon for them to make 50, 55,000.
Mm-hmm. Okay.
They're working a lot of hours for it.
Mhm.
Nobody's giving them money free.
Mhm.
It's every penny of its worth, but
Okay.
it's not uncommon to have that happen.
Now, are different cities paying different salaries?
Oh, very much so.
How does that work?
It's what the city wants to do. Torrance is very high paid.
Really?
One of the highest around there. Beverly Hills is extremely high paid.
Huh.
San Francisco Police Department, those guys are really, really highly paid.
Mm-hmm.
However, you've seen some of these other cities like Pleasanton,
Mm-hmm.
up in the Bay Area,
Mm-hmm.
for years was very highly paid because of all the economic issues. Not so much anymore.
Really?
San Jose was at one time the highest paid department in the nation.
Wow.
They've had extreme cutbacks because of changes in the economy.
All computer geeks that aren't doing anything.
Yeah, that's exactly it. So
There's no crime.
yeah, so it changes a little bit, and and one of the things we understand too, as a police department working where we work for a city manager,
Mhm.
we work for a city council.
Mm-hmm.
We have those responsibilities to manage our budgets.
Mm-hmm.
We can't kind of manage them. We have to manage them.
Mhm.
We have to be held accountable for every penny.
Mm-hmm.
That's taxpayer money.
Mm-hmm.
We have an absolute obligation to do that, and we work very hard to work in that environment.
Other than the dough, other than the money, what kind of bennies can we expect as a police
There's some health benefit,
Mhm.
which comes along with it.
Mhm.
Retirement's another one.
Okay. 401k.
Well, actually, we don't do 401ks.
Okay. What's the difference there?
The difference is the California Public Employees System.
Mm-hmm.
That's where most of our officers are. I don't know of any police agencies in California that are not part of it. Well, a couple exceptions. City of San Diego had their own
Mm-hmm.
retirement system. A couple others that did, and it's actually been a real problem now because they're in a small pool versus a bigger pool.
Mm-hmm.
The LAPD has their own retirement system.
Okay.
So again, you're having that.
You got to
Plus-
put in X amount of years and then.
right, and they're different. They're not part of the California Public Employees Retirement System.
Mm-hmm.
The counties themselves are different.
Mm-hmm.
Most of the counties have their own retirement system. County of Orange, County of Los Angeles.
Mm-hmm.
However, some counties, such as Riverside, is part of California Public Employees Retirement System, CalPERS.
Mm-hmm. Okay.
So there's a little bit of variance in them, but most departments still have what's called a 3% at 50.
What does that mean?
So you get 3% of each year that you work towards your retirement.
Oh, okay.
but you have to be at least 50 years old before you can retire.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, so you got people like me that are over 50. You know, I'm not maxed out, but I could theoretically retire today if I want.
Wow.
I just wouldn't be maxed out, and I plan on staying here because I like it.
Right. Okay.
I have one of my lieutenants, who God love him.
Yeah.
He could have retired 4+ years ago.
Wow.
He's not making a dime. He's actually losing money, but he enjoys coming to work.
Wow.
And he's a great asset to this department.
Very cool.
So I love the fact that he wants to do this. I sometimes question why he does it, but God love him, he loves to come to work and does a great job. I love having him here.
Okay.
So again, you have people like that who they're actually losing money to work here because they enjoy working. They love this community.
Yeah.
And we have friends throughout the community. And that's at times very hard to deal with.
We've got the salary. We've got medical, dental. We've got a retirement plan.
Right.
You get to carry a gun. You get a badge. You ever flash your badge and try to get in front line there or something?
No, never.
Huh?
No.
Get to the front table or anything?
Nope.
Let me. You know who I am? Huh?
Nope. No, I never do that. I'll tell you. I will tell you that over years I've seen officers who've done that, and
Go down to the north end, get a free drink.
yeah. Well, you know, so much. Yeah, they're all off duty and stuff like that. But you know, it's embarrassing. It's unprofessional.
Mm-hmm.
And it is such a rarity. I mean, every once in a while you get that brand new officer who's 21 years old, and you know they're 21 years old and know just enough to get themselves in trouble.
Right.
And there's something to be said about that. So you go, no, don't do that. You know, if you're off duty, you should be acting the same way as Joe Public. You really should. I mean, yes, I can carry a concealed weapon, but that doesn't mean you walk around with a concealed weapon on you showing it to the world. It's concealed. You should act concealed because the speed limit's 65 and you have your own personal vehicle and you're off duty. It doesn't mean you should do 75. You should be doing 65. You should hold yourself to the same standards that we would in the general
Is that
public.
a benefit in itself? I mean, if I am pulling over for speeding, do you guys kind of have a code between police officers that's
Not necessarily.
and said that, you know, hey, I worked over here at Hermosa, come on, give me a break, you don't
Not
get a ticket
necessarily.
type of thing?
No, I think what everybody tends to follow on the same standard. Would you write that to the Joe Public? Yeah, if we saw a guy who's, you know, just whatever, he's Joe the plumber, and he's driving along in his truck and he's doing 85, he's maybe the nicest guy in the world, we go, yeah, but you're doing 85 miles an hour. You know, I write you a ticket. I would expect if my officer did the same thing that they'd get citation.
Now, would that come back to haunt the officer? If
It
he
could.
Did? It could come
It
back
could to some extent, sure. I mean, if it's one thing, it's a moving violation, not so much. I wouldn't be proud to hear about it, obviously. But
Hermosa Beach police officer found drunk and
yeah, well, not even drunk, just you know, obviously drunk's another issue. But if they got a citation, they got a citation. They have to let us know.
okay, they got to let you know.
And yeah, and that's may not necessarily harm them in their career or anything, but you know, we also say, hey, you know, you need to pay attention. You know, we can't have it. We have to hold our same standards as we would the public. And we also know, you know, like somebody pointed out, it's Southern California. The standard is 65, which means some people it's 80.
Right.
And we also, people said, you know, and I've known officers who've been off duty going, I'm driving 65, and everybody's screaming at me, honking their horns because I'm not going 80. And so I understand that too. It's, you know, there's a little bit of quandary on that, but again, we want our officers to act as we would if they're just part of the public, because in essence, on duty and off duty, we are part of the public. So we have a standard. We really have to uphold it.
That makes sense.
Hypocrisy is not allowed.
Okay.
So
let's talk about the pros and cons of this career. What do you love about being a police officer?
You know, one of the great things I love about it, I think if nothing else, I think you get to make great change. You get to help people. The vast majority of cops that come in here, maybe one or two who don't last long in police work, their number one issue, they like working with people, they like helping people. That's, if I would say those two issues, they like being with people, like helping people.
It seems
they
like
like teamwork.
Yeah, I was going to say, it seemed like the best cops were the ones that were sort of, they could get along with people, like you said.
Absolutely.
That they didn't have a chip on their shoulder. They weren't,
Absolutely.
you know, Joe Law. They were nice police officers. Their careers seemed maybe easier on them. Or?
Well, yeah. I thought, and I think more rewarding. I've arrested a lot of really bad people over the years. I mean, really bad people. People who were sentenced the rest of their life in prison.
Wow.
There's an accomplishment out of that because, you know, they're not harming people. But that's that rarity. It's just that day-to-day person who needs help, and you help them. It may not be perfect. We may not be able to control everything, but if you made things just a little bit better, that's kind of a neat feeling.
I think you would communicate better, too, with better social skills and more of a gentle sort of
You get back to the same issue. This guy could be the worst person in the world. If you can talk them into jail instead of fighting them into jail, we're all better off.
Okay.
And we have to be that. We have to be a master of so many different things. You know, we have to sit there and comfort people when somebody's injured. You know, it's hard to tell them, I'm sorry that your child just got killed in this collision. How do you come up to somebody? It's not easy.
Right.
You know, and our officers have to do that, and they do. You know, it's not easy. It's difficult, but they do it. On the same side of it, we've had to arrest people, and parents are screaming, "That's my kid." You know, you can't take my child away. Well, your child's 25 years old, and he just robbed somebody. Yeah, I have to, and I'm sorry this happened. I know that's your child. I know that's your son. You love your son, but I also have an obligation. I'm not doing this to harm you. Right, and it is. It's very difficult.
I was just going to ask you, what is not so fabulous about this career? And that sounds like an element there. You know, you might have to hurt some people's feeling watching a mother,
very much so.
You know, in pain over her son possibly going away.
Yeah, absolutely, things like that. Having to come out there and find out this collision, and we have to go out to the family with the coroner's office and saying, "Your son was just killed 2 hours ago." That's not fun, but we have to.
Anything else not so fabulous about this job? Maybe it's kind of dangerous.
It's dangerous at times, absolutely. And I can't tell you how many times I've been punched, kicked, spat on, threatened.
Wow.
Had guns pulled on me, knives pulled on me.
Right. Wow.
It's incredible. There's a lot of violence with a handful of people. And yeah, it is scary. And I've, you know, known a lot of people over the years who've had some problems. You know, officers have been hurt. I tore up my right knee years ago fighting with a guy. Had to have surgery on it. We've had officers who've had back surgeries, neck surgeries, because they've been injured fighting with people. Part of it too, just that day-to-day thing, but it seems to happen more because of how we have to patrol. People run through intersections and have hit our officers and their cars. We've had officers who've had major surgeries because of that. Some of them never come back, and they're in constant pain for the rest of their lives. That's a difficult thing.
Any psychological type of stuff, like maybe people calling you names, or the people that are, does any of that ever come home with you? Like, is it tough to sleep sometimes, or anything like that?
Not calling the names. You know, I think it's one of those things, a maturity issue. You know, we previously mentioned that issue of youth is wasted on the young. I think it's, you know, if you think back if you're in high school, somebody called you something, it was, hey, you know, you're a young man, you know, and you tend to go in those terms. But as we get older, we just go, hey, you're a jerk. You know, you know, what are you going to do? You know, and in our case, we go, you know, you can be a jerk if that's what you want, but we're still going to have to handle it this way. We will still handle it in a professional manner.
How does one get started? Is there an internship available for?
Not really an internship. A lot of departments will have what they call cadets, and they're usually 18, 19 years old, and most of them tend to be going to school, college, and it's a part-time job. We don't have that because of budget cuts right now, but a lot of most departments have lost them, unfortunately, to budget, but they'll probably be coming back, hopefully. But it's an ability for those officers, those employees, part-time employees, to work with the police officers. And sometimes they're quite frankly cruddy jobs to do. You know, we need you to help sweep up this area.
You drive around the cheap little truck out there.
Yeah, right. Or it could be other things too. We need to help us. We have to transfer a whole bunch of evidence from this location to that location. You know, we need to help carry this stuff over. Well, it's kind of manual labor, if you will, but you know what? They learn something about it, and it's an opportunity to talk to them. They say, "Hey, well, why do we do this?" They tend to be very curious people. Well, because this. Why why do we have to have everything in a separate bag? Well, because we can't cross-contaminate evidence. Let me explain why this occurs.
Is that a volunteer position, the cadet, or is that
no?
paid?
It's a paid position.
That's a paid position.
It's a paid position. It doesn't make much more than minimum wage.
But they sound like future cops, though.
Most of them are. Some don't. Some get in and go, it's not what I want to do, and that's okay too. If they've had, I thought it'd be something different, and it is what it is type thing. But again, I think if nothing else, they get a better background of what does occur. If nothing else, you still maintain good relationships with these people. I still keep contact with cadets that I've known for 20 plus years ago.
Wow. Okay.
And a couple of them are attorneys. One is doing very, very well as an attorney, and just one of the nicest guys you ever met. His older brother's a police officer.
Okay.
And he worked for me at Huntington Beach as as a cadet. Did a great job, but he realized, but that's not what I really want to be. And he's a phenomenal attorney right now. Does business law.
Mm-hmm. How does one get started? Do we just go on the internet to fill out an application to, say, be a Hermosa Beach police officer?
Right. You fill that out, and it's reviewed, meets some minimum criteria. In other words, you're not a convicted felon. You don't have these other issues. But then we bring in, you have that interview or oral board in front of experienced officers, and often, depending on how we do it, sometimes we'll also have a community member in there and get their input. And they're asked questions that are the same questions, all the standardized questions. There may be follow-up issues.
Would you arrest your mother? Would you write your mother a ticket?
Well, it's funny you mentioned that. I'm not going to say which department this was. My very first interview applying for a police officer, having just graduated from Cal State Long Beach, I went to this agency, and one of the first thing is, would you, here's this issue. Here's this collision that just occurred. The person driving is drunk. It's your mother, and you're the one out there. Would you arrest your mother?
Hell yeah!
And I said that, and they go, what? You're really going to arrest your mother? What? Well, yeah. Okay. Well, which one is it? Are you or aren't you?
Are you or aren't you?
Yeah, yeah. It was that interview was a disaster.
Oh no!
I just wanted to hide and never, crawl under the carpet and leave me alone. I don't.
Right.
It was a total disaster, but I learned from it.
Mm-hmm.
I got to be honest though. To this day, I don't like it.
That's a tough question.
Well, and it's not realistic.
Right.
It really isn't. If my mother would, well, first off, my mother doesn't live around here, but that's number one. But number two, but if it was my mother, and I go, oh God, I couldn't say.
I could never give my mother a ticket.
Course.
Are you kidding?
Right. The reality is, but if it's something that's bad, I'm going to say, hey, could you write the ticket, or could you? My mother's DUI, and I had to also realize it's my mom. She had a rental car.
Right.
I'm not going to have my mother do a field sobriety test. I'm going to have another officer because it's a conflict for a variety of reasons. Right. So I think the premise itself is really bad.
Mm-hmm.
But again, it's just one of those things that you do have an ethical issue though, and I've had to arrest people I've known, people I went to high school with, people, stuff like that. Mm-hmm. One of which I ran into at my 20-year reunion. And,
oh no!
And I go, no, how's this going to go? And he just goes, hey,
hey, dude.
He said, I'm sorry I put you in the spot.
Oh, okay, that was big of him.
I mean, he was a little loud and obnoxious, which, as I knew him beforehand, wasn't. He was just going, I was stupid. And he goes, I didn't have a chance to contact you. I was hoping you were going to be here, and I'm sorry I did that. Mm-hmm. I go, nice. I'm still embarrassed.
Wow.
I go, well, you learned. He goes, yeah. I go, don't be embarrassed.
Yeah.
You learned. That's all we care. That's what we care about. You learned. You weren't going to do it again. So it's good to go. But again, it's not comfortable.
Are there some goodies that we can get together prior to filling out the application that would make our job easier to get hired? Like maybe get our transcripts together, get our a resume done, and those goodies. What or do we need a basket of goodies?
Yeah, there's no requirement, but I have nothing else. I'm always a firm believer in a resume. Mm-hmm. You should have one anyways for a variety of reasons. Mm-hmm. But one of the things that also helps you too, if nothing else, if you're going to go for an oral board, an interview, if you will. It lets you know who you are. Mm-hmm. It's a process we can look in, and off the top of your head. I mean, obviously, if you graduate from whatever university, but you can talk about the dates. You can also talk about, okay, in my head, I remember they may ask you, well, what specific thing did you learn? If you had one specific thing from your bachelor's degree, what was it? Well, I'm glad you asked that. This and this. When I learned this, I thought it was the best thing about it, and this is why I think it applied towards police work.
Is I forgot a good answer?
No, I forgot usually doesn't work.
Nothing, really.
I will tell you one thing, though, that I find surprising to this day, and this is for well over 20 years, I have never understood people apply to be a police officer. They show up late for the interview. I do understand.
Oh, no.
Which I do understand. There was one guy that did apply. He was coming in, and it's Huntington Beach. There was a true full pile-up. He called in it.
Okay, it was legit.
Very legit.
Okay.
We understood that. But if other people, I was just about 20 minutes late. Is that a big deal? Yeah. Well, why it's a big deal? Well, I don't know. If we had to go out and take care of a problem, and there's a major problem going on, and you're 20 minutes late, that's an issue.
And he reeked of booze.
Well, funny you mentioned that. Another guy that same day.
Hiring?
Yeah, same day showed up, and he was late. He shows up with swim trunks on, a tank top, and flip-flops, and we're going, really?
Oh, no.
And one of them just goes, that. And, I took a couple bong hits. Okay.
Little powdered sugar rings.
Yeah, fortunately it wasn't that, but, and he said, And we went through the whole thing, and his whole interview was a disaster.
Oh no! What a waste of time.
To be expected. Well, yeah, but he had a right to do it, so we did. We're not going to tell him no.
Right. Okay.
But he goes, "Well, do you think I can get the job?" I said, "I can't say yes or no, but I said
we'll call you."
Yeah, it was one of those sort of things. I mean, and just what it comes back to, it's the same issue that all of us rely on day-to-day: common sense.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
If you're gonna show up for an interview, research the department.
Yeah.
Research the city.
Okay. Good
Who's
advice.
the police chief?
Mm-hmm.
Who's the mayor?
Mm-hmm.
I go, what does that matter? Well, it probably does, because your police chief appoints you.
Mm-hmm.
The mayor is in charge of the city council.
Mm-hmm.
The city manager appoints the police chief.
Interesting.
Maybe a good thing to know. Maybe to know what are some of the concerns in the community.
Oh, I like it.
Is there an increase in vehicle burglaries?
Mm-hmm. Awesome stuff.
And so we said, why do I need to know that? Well, because as a police officer, you need to know that.
Mm-hmm.
I understand you're not a police officer now, but again, it shows that interest.
Mm-hmm.
You need to start developing your mind towards that direction.
I like it. Mm-hmm.
The other thing too, look good in your uniform.
Mm-hmm.
The one that you're 23 years old, the what you wore for your high school graduation doesn't fit anymore.
Get some clothes.
Look if you want to be treated as a professional,
clean them.
Yes, act as a professional. Look like a professional, and I really mean that.
Mm-hmm.
Try to do everything you can. Learn from any mistakes you do make.
Okay.
People who fail an interview, I always tell them, if you fail, make it a learning environment.
Mm-hmm.
Try to jot down as soon as you can. Get into your car. What did they ask me? What was my response to this? Best way to call, because you know what? Following day won't be as clear.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
How would I redo that now that I looked at it?
Now, do you guys check maybe a Facebook page or something like that? And they got
Yes.
pictures with their homies on there and stuff. Do you want to clean up your Facebook page and all those goodies before you come in?
Well, I would suggest that they do.
Mm-hmm.
Here's one of the things, too. They waive the right to privacy so we can see that.
Mm-hmm.
That's part of the background investigation. After
Mm-hmm.
they've gone through certain segments, we do a full background investigation, which takes a lot of time, a lot of effort. We find out everything about them.
Clean it up, mister.
Clean it up. Well, and the thing is, we can still find it, too.
You can still find it? So don't even post it.
Well, that's the thing. There's metadata that we could probably
With your low riders and your 40?
Well, that's the thing, too. We've had guys over the years.
A little cigarette?
Yeah, and that's the thing. You don't want those people. And I always tell people, there's probably the vast majority of people who smoke marijuana.
Mm-hmm.
Smoking marijuana 5, 6, 7, 8 times probably isn't the world thing.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, how many times? Well, I don't know, at least 500. That's a problem.
I got my card. It's legal.
Yeah, and that's another one too. And so again, we try to tell people, if you're thinking ahead where you want to be,
Mm-hmm.
and I know we also know it's more difficult when you're younger.
Mm-hmm.
You're not really focused. You have some ideas,
Mm-hmm.
But again, if you're focusing towards that, we tell people you keep your focus towards what you really want.
Mm-hmm.
So again, if you know that this is going to be a big deal, you handle it that way.
Mm-hmm.
If you're probably selling cars at a Chevy dealership,
Mm-hmm.
they probably really don't care what's on your Facebook page,
Mm-hmm.
because as long as you're selling cars, they're okay.
Mm-hmm.
You're not stealing anything. You're not doing anything like that. But it is a big deal when it's a public trust issue.
Mm-hmm.
So again, if you keep that in mind, that you want to work in a public trust issue and actually earn that trust,
Mm-hmm.
work towards that direction.
We usually close with a funny story or an interesting story. Do you have a funny story for us before we're ready to wrap it up here? You can think of as during your career as a police officer? Something funny happened?
Yeah,
they catch you guys at the donut shop or something?
No, I don't go for donuts.
Around
don't go for donuts. Oh, I know. I have one. I had a trainee. I was a field training officer at Huntington Beach, and a nice young man. Actually did very well.
Mm-hmm.
But I remember had just left the station. This is about his third week on the department.
Mm-hmm.
I just received him. That's my second day working with him. And he's driving the car. I'm on the passenger side. I go, hey, pull that guy over. You see that? He did. Oh, yeah, let's get over there. And this guy starts getting real hinky.
Hmm.
And he starts going, what are you stopping me for? And, he's get to that point where he's starting to get really angry, a little violent. Hey, we're just trying to talk to him. And I remember looking over I was on the passenger side, the other officers on the driver's side, and also I'm looking over and going, what looks out of place? Oh yeah, your pistol's not there.
What?
And I go call the guy. Okay, I go, guy's ID. Let's go back here. I go, okay, this and this. And I have another officer who goes, oh, we could probably handle it. I go, yeah, but if you had your pistol with you, and he goes, oh my God.
No. Where was it?
He left it in his locker. He goes,
oh no.
He goes, I set it in my locker, went to retie my boot, and he goes, I can't believe I did that. I go, neither can I. He turned out to be
hold it. Wait. Hey.
Yes. Well, you know, in fairness, he had a ballpoint pen. You know, but you know, I've never seen a guy turn bright red. And you know, he had a daily evaluation. He got hammered.
Oh no, that's awesome.
But it was, you know, it was just a great opportunity. You know, it was just one of those things. His mindset was gone that day, and he said, you know, it was probably the best learning lesson I ever had.
For the entire department, it sounds like.
Very much so. Yeah. And of course, everybody forgot about it, never brought it up again.
Yeah, right.
They're still bringing it up. So, but
right
again,
on.
It's part of that culture, though. But, you know, it's the whole thing.
Hilarious.
There's an old thing about police work. If your buddies aren't insulting you, they don't like you. But he turned out to be a great guy and has done a wonderful job.
I love it. I love it. Do you have any advice for young people that you want to share with these guys other than what you've shared?
Yes. If I were to say one thing, focus on your careers. If you do believe that you want to be in something such as law enforcement or any other organization such as fire department or anything where it's a public trust, work towards that public trust. Be honest. Be reasonable. Be a professional at all times. And finally, no matter what you do, remember, ego doesn't solve things. Intelligence, the ability to work with people, does. With that said.
Right on. There you have it. How to become a police officer. We're here with the police chief, Mr. Steve Johnson. Thank you.
My
Steve,
pleasure.
Thank you so much.
Thank you very much.
We had a great time. Thanks for having us.
Thank you.
This is Freddy Cochran closing out another edition of California Careers. Take care. Well, there you have it. How to become a police officer. What a very cool career. We'd like to thank Police Chief Steve Johnson for joining us today. If you have any questions about this career or any other career you'd like us to check out, please visit our website at internetworktvcorp.com. I'm Freddy Cochran, your host. Thanks for joining us. Take care.